While it had a limited theatrical run, the Fuma conspiracy is considered the first original video animation for Lupin III. You might recognise the name Fuma in the context of the series, as the gang went up against them back in episode 36 of Series 2. Due to the episodic nature of the series, there's no recognition or revenge as a motive in this one, however. Lupin's in green again, which seems to be a bit of an omen in this earlier era. To give examples, Series 1 was cancelled due to a rough first few episodes and bad ratings. Castle of Cagliostro, while a hit now, barely broke even at the time. With Fuma Conspiracy, the issue was budget. TMS were involved in animating an adaptation of Little Nemo at the time, which was going through its own development hell that lasted several years. Lupin III's voice cast were apparently quite expensive, which led to them deciding to recast with cheaper options. This led to backlash from fans and allegedly even the cast themselves. Going on he said she said knowledge here, but the replacement cast were uneasy about filling such big roles, and one of the biggest people against the change was Yasuo Yamada himself. Despite initially signing off, he got into an argument with Monkey Punch over it, feeling he should have fought the corner more. Monkey Punch would later apologise to him when the cast was reinstated for the TV movies in 1989, but he felt there was still an uneasiness between him and Yamada for the rest of their lives. While I'm sure English speakers are familiar with at least a few voice recastings that were met with backlash, it's possible that Lupin's Japanese casting may have had a knock-on effect over there, especially considering this was pre-internet backlash. Speculation on my part, but it could be one reason why you see some Japanese voice actors in the roles into the 70s, 80s, even 90s in some cases. Also could be partially why you have some characters rely on recycled and remixed voice clips that are written around after the actor's death, something that's happened with one of the replacement actors here in some of his other roles. With that said, here are the replacements. For this movie, Lupin is voiced by Toshio Furukawa, Jigen is voiced by Banjo Ginga, Fujiko is voiced by Mami Koyama, Goemon is voiced by Kaneto Shiozawa, and last but never least, Zenigata is voiced by Seizar Kato. For my opinion on them, they're alright, though they do lack a few of the mannerisms that the Series 2 cast gave to make them their own. Jigen's probably the most jarring, though I'd put that down to Kiyoshi Kobayashi being the only voice of the character before and since up to his 2021 retirement. Other actors include Mayumi Sho as Murasaki, Kohei Miyuchi as her grandfather, the elder Suminawa, Masashi Hirose as the Fuma clan's boss, and Shigeru Chiba as Kazami. Maybe just a personal thing I noticed, but a lot of the voice actors were also in Dragon Ball. Something amusing about a series that got that big being considered a cheaper option for voice talent at the time. Yuji Ono was also likely considered too expensive, as this movie is composed by Kiyoshi Miyaura. He does a good job, though it's notably less bombastic than Ono's work. He also provided an insert song, Undercover Love, performed by Kazumi Miyaura and written by Phil Rhodes. The opening theme, C'est la vie to Iwanaide, was composed by Shingo Minami, as well as being performed by Miki Asakura and written by Tatsumi Yano. With all that said, there was some benefit, as a lot of the budget was seemingly pulled into the art and animation department. Yasuo Otsuka was also brought back on as a supervisor role, suggesting pulling some design work from Castle of Cagliostro like the Green Jacket and the Fiat 500. Makoto Naito served as screenwriter, while direction was handled by Masayuki Ozeki. With that, let's get into the story. We open on the wedding of Goemon Ishikawa XIII and Murasaki Suminawa. The rest of the gang are also present, soon alerted to a man spying on them. As the ceremonial vase is brought out, Goemon senses danger. A group of ninjas make an attack on the wedding, taking the vase themselves. Goemon fights back, but they manage to slip out. Lupin intercepts them as they escape in his direction. Fujiko then comes into possession of the vase when she trips up the man carrying it as he tries to avoid Lupin. Unfortunately, the ninjas change their target to Murasaki, leaving the gang with a ransom note for an exchange. Officer Kazami, the man who was spying on the gang, approaches Zenigata. Zenigata's now a monk after bearing witness to what he believes was Lupin's death. He's shocked right out of retirement when Kazami presents him with a photo of Lupin at the wedding. Goemon apologises to the elder Suminoa for being unable to save Murasaki. Suminoa tells him that the vase is the important thing for now, as it's a map to a 400-year-old treasure deep underground that the Fuma clan, Murasaki's kidnappers, are targeting. Lupin, keeping watch, disagrees with Suminoa's stance, as the goal always comes first in his mind. He uses a bug he's constructed to break into the safe where the vase is stored. Examining the vase, a marking catches his interest. As they drive out, Goemon thinks back on how he first met Murasaki when he came to the region. He was seeking out her grandfather for training and she took an interest in him, which eventually blossomed into a romance. The reminiscence is cut short when the gang spots Zenigata tailing them. Lupin tries to hide but gets spotted at the last second. He's relieved and ready to once again begin the chase with arresting Lupin. Their chase takes them into a river, but only Lupin's car is amphibious. Doesn't stop Zenigata either way. They end up racing across a bridge that falls to pieces around them. Lupin escapes, but Zenigata takes another plunge in the water. Suminoa discovers the vase was stolen as the gang head to a train yard for the ransom exchange. They enter a stalemate as Goemon demands Murasaki first. Lupin decides to toss the vase around to mess with the Fuma and try to get them to give her over. Goemon puts a stop to it and they make the exchange using the turntable. Lupin tries pulling the vase back, but he gets sabotaged by a shuriken. As they engage in a shootout, Zenigata arrives on the scene. Jigen takes this chance to hijack a train and escape with everyone. As the police pursue, Kazami hangs back. Suminoa heads to an old shrine and fires on it. Meanwhile, Fujiko manages to track down the Fuma to their hideout. The gang leave Murasaki to get changed as they discuss what to do next. Goemon grows angry at Lupin, suggesting they just take the treasure. Murasaki, dressed in an outfit that includes one of Lupin's red jackets, approaches, saying she's eager to take them to it if they want. Lupin and Jigen race off as Goemon learns Lupin told her everything. Lupin decides to track down Fujiko using a transmitter and a pendant he gifted her. Fujiko keeps an eye on the Fuma as they analyse the vase, realising too late she's been surrounded. She spots Kazami among their numbers as she's brought before their boss, who taunts her by dumping the vase on her head. Kazami then takes the pendant and brings it with him to Zenigata, figuring Lupin will follow. Sure enough, Lupin heads there none the wiser. As Zenigata closes in on him, Lupin tells him to look into Kazami instead, having already figured he's a member of the Fuma. Kazami tosses him the pendant and escapes across the rooftops. Fujiko manages to trick her guard into getting close by faking an itch. She knocks him out by smashing the vase against him, grabbing the keys to her cuffs. As she leaves, she notices part of the vase has something metallic inside, discovering a key. She also spots Lupin caught up in another car chase. Lupin also passes by Goemon and Murasaki as they enjoy a meal aboard a train. This chase takes Lupin to a road suffering the after effects of a rockfall. It also cuts out pretty quickly. They land on the roof of a local inn, and end up causing chaos as they race through. The nearby hot spring also falls victim to the chase. Fujiko manages to catch up, driving overhead. She drops down on one police car and passes Zenigata some evidence implicating Kazami as a Fuma. Said evidence also contains sleep powder. Zenigata, as we know, has a built immunity to the stuff. Fujiko then counters by using her side view mirror to dazzle him. The smoke screen fires off, but Zenigata keeps his composure. He ends up on a railway for his trouble. The Fuma head to the shrine, prepared to discover and disable any traps. They find a device that opens a hidden cave, where Suminawa is armed and waiting. The boss flicks a coin at him and throws his aim off. They then toss him over the cliffside when he refuses to help them. Murasaki and Goemon are headed to the shrine themselves. She engages in a bit of flirting, but it's interrupted when Goemon senses the Fuma nearby. Making it to the cave, Murasaki falls through a hole. She discovers a chain inside that opens a stairwell to the real treasure path. They press on, though the Fuma aren't far behind. Outside, the police arrive, spotting the gang as they make their way ahead, as well as a barely alive Suminawa. Goemon and Murasaki make it to a room with statues inside, though Goemon deduces they're not what the Fuma are targeting. Murasaki realises they're all staring at one spot, discovering a hidden trapdoor. Goemon suggests heading back as the Fuma haven't made their move, not spotting them overhead. Spotting a shadow, Goemon readies for battle only to discover it's the rest of the gang. They learn the vase was broken, but Lupin points out it's no longer relevant if the Fuma are already here. Outside, Suminawa explains to the police that the shrine is load-bearing if opened without the key Fujiko found, though with the lock already shut out it's only a matter of time before the whole thing collapses. Zenigata panics, telling him the gang and Murasaki are inside. Lupin ends up falling into a hidden passage as they press on. Discovering another potential hazard ahead, Goemon steps forward and deflects any arrows that come his way. The Fuma reach another branching entrance, taking the lower road upon hearing violent noises when some of their expendables try the main door. As the gang explore a number of branches themselves, Jigen causes a cave-in. Thankfully it closes off the false routes. Alerted, Zenigata and Suminawa race in to help out. The gang decide to take the main door, seeing statues inside. The door closes behind Goemon and a strange gas is released. As he explores, he discovers the aftermath of the Fuma that entered beforehand and begins hallucinating the statues are alive. Worse still, he sees Lupin and Jigen as enemies too as they break in. Lupin urges everyone to get outside, but Murasaki tries to get through to Goemon. She ends up suffering a strike from Zantetsuken. Thankfully the attack wasn't severe, though Goemon's ashamed. Fujiko suggests moving ahead as she and Jigen have found a way forward, leaving Goemon to tend to Murasaki, or possibly the other way around. They race through more traps, finally reaching the treasure, a large building with a roof made of gold. Fujiko's gold fever gets the better of her despite Lupin's warnings. Inside, they discover Teppo also made of gold. Lupin becomes suspicious to the Fuma's location, discovering they've taken Fujiko captive outside. Lupin tries to negotiate a split on the treasure. When this fails, he claims to have set a bomb. His detonator just turns out to be a lighter, as the boss discovers when he coins it out of Lupin's hand. Goemon comes to the rescue and a battle ensues through the building. He engages in a battle with the boss outside while the gang get backed upstairs. Lupin tosses one of the hallucinogen containers at the Fuma as they head upward. Fun bit here as he transforms into the designs from previous series. Either way, the Fuma start turning on each other. Goemon continues fighting with the boss outside. Murasaki sneaks over to a crossbow in an attempt to help, but all she does is alert her presence. Kazami chases her along the cave's wall and she ends up losing her grip. She slips back to the building and the boss takes her captive. Goemon surrenders Zantetsuken, though the gang notice underneath. Murasaki knocks herself and Kazami off the roof, though Lupin saves her. Jigen tosses Goemon the sword and he lands a blow on the boss. Suminawa and Zenigata arrive to tell everyone to escape. Fujiko tries grabbing a few roof tiles as a souvenir, but loses them when she slips on the way out. The boss goes down with the treasure, and Zenigata hangs back for everyone else. The officers outside manage to dig him out, and it turns out the gang found another exit. Suminawa says to just let them go for now, though it falls on deaf ears because it's Zenigata. As the gang ride off, Fujiko reveals she managed to salvage a tile. Goemon tells Murasaki he needs more training and heads back on the road as Lupin also gives his goodbyes. Zenigata catches up to her, reinvigorated and putting out another call for Lupin's arrests as the gang head off on their respective paths. Well, the claim was the budget sacrificed the voice cast for the animation, and it definitely shows. The screenshots likely show just how nice the artwork is, but the animation itself is certainly up there too. The car chases certainly highlight it, but we also get some nice motion with the fight scenes, especially when Goemon's involved. Castle of Cagliostro may be generally considered as the gold standard, but this can at the very least match it. On the note of Goemon, it's nice to see him pretty much take centre stage for a story. More so as it's a feature-length one, where the focus is usually Lupin. Not to say Lupin and the others aren't involved at any rate, with everyone getting a decent chance to shine. Murasaki has some good chemistry with Goemon, and does well in managing to hold her own as a character as the story fleshes her out. Plot-wise, it's largely standard fare, though I do appreciate a few of the twists, such as the key Fujiko finding being ultimately worthless by the time she gets it. Also, while standard, it's not afraid to go a bit darker in a few regards, with the hallucination scenes and the fallout from them on both Lupin and the Fuma's sides as an example. Plus it's an instance where it's at least implied Goemon's not using the flat end of Zantetsuken. I think one of my criticisms is probably the soundtrack. Not that the music itself is bad, just that you don't really hear much outside of the bigger chase and fight scenes, as well as the hallucinations. Bit of a missed story with Lupin faking his death too, I feel. Serves the purpose of giving Zenigata an amusing entrance at any rate. Overall, while the different voice actors may take some getting used to initially, check this one out for an entertaining story and some high quality animation and art direction. Next time, we begin the era of annual TV movies as Lupin steals a certain famous landmark in Goodbye Lady Liberty. Until then.